Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Caitanya-caritāmṛta reading from the unadulterated, unchanged books of our spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. And before we begin the class, I wanted Vincott to please, if you could put up the draft mission statement for the Prabhupada Disciples Association. We can just review it so everyone has a proper perspective on why we're all coming together on this platform in this group. Because there are many, many groups in the Vaishnava community that are operating online, and not only in the ISKCON world, but on the other groups, in the other groups that have developed over a particular period of time for whatever reasons they are joining together or individually getting on the pulpit of preaching Krishna consciousness to other people. I've been studying the different, some of the different people that are speaking over the last week to just see where they're at, what's their motive, what is their purpose, and it gives me a better understanding of what we are doing here. What is our motive? Let's put it this way: what is our reason for doing this? Because a lot of people are motivated. They want to be celebrities, for example. Everybody wants to be a celebrity. Just like a lot of people, they want to be rock stars. No matter where they go, wherever you go, if you're in the music business, you can be with lawyers, you can be with doctors, you can be with professors. They all wish, oh, I wish I played hockey or played music. They think that. So lots of people, even in the ISKCON movement, for example, they're there to, become celebrities through chanting. And largely that's their motivation. But our motivation is much different. Here are the objectives. This is a draft. I'll read it out for all of you. The 4 objectives of the Prabhupada Disciples Association are: 1, to establish His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda as A, the foremost preacher of Krishna consciousness in modern times; B, the sole successor Acharya of his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj; C, the sole Diksha Guru of the Krishna consciousness movement; in his
We're having a hard time hearing you.
Vishwakarma Prabhu, I think his connection is slow. Yeah, looks like he dropped out, but I'll just read it out. So these are the 4 objectives, as Vishwakarma Prabhu was saying: to establish His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda as the foremost preacher of Krishna consciousness in modern times, the sole successor Acharya of his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, the sole Diksha Guru of the Krishna Consciousness movement, and the ever-present and ultimate authority on all matters. I think we have Vishwakarma Prabhu back. Prabhu, you're on mute.
Yeah, I guess we had a technical breakdown there for a second. To preserve and distribute Srila Prabhupada's original unadulterated books worldwide and to make widely available all his works, including writings, lectures, and conversations. 3, to present Srila Prabhupada's teachings without interpretation, speculation, or personal motivation, and to increase awareness about deviations and distortions in the Krishna society at large for the benefit of sincere adherents or new seekers of the truth. To bring together members who have sincere desire to serve Srila Prabhupada in order to fulfill his transcendental mission. So along with that, we have a constitution which is based on Prabhupada's original constitution that he formed in 1966. And we're also including direction of management instructions that were added to the Constitution to give people a more understanding of how to work together cooperatively in spreading Krishna consciousness. Unfortunately, there is a multitude of different groups now working independent, not only inside the ISKCON movement, but outside it. So there's all kinds of, it's called, the term that they use is Ritvik groups. We're not a Ritvik group, we're a Prabhupada Disciples Association. We use the Ritvik system for initiation. And at our next talk, I will go over the rules that we're implementing, which will be included in our constitution to embrace new people into our association if they want to become Prabhupada disciples. We also conduct initiations. And we're planning an initiation in March, I believe, at the Gaur Purnima festival. There might be 1 or 2 people that are going to be initiated. So I'll let everyone know about that in the future. So constitution from Prabhupada, the direction of management, and the rules for initiation. And we're also forming a Brahminical council. We already have a membership of it, and we're looking for more people to be a part of that and to work together cooperatively to establish our agenda moving forward this year on the goals that we're planning to achieve to spread the Krishna consciousness movement globally. We have some very good people in our group with lots of talent, ability, and motivation to make this happen in an effective manner. So we're going to move ahead with the kirtan now, and then the class. I believe, is Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu with us?
Yes.
Yes, he's here.
Okay, excellent.
Yes, he is. Electricity has been restored in the mountains here.
Oh, okay, excellent. So Krishna is with us. So let's go ahead with the kirtan and then Jaya Radha Madhava prayers, I should say, and then the Caitanya-caritāmṛta reading.
Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Yaśodā-nandana Dāsa Yaśodā-nandana Dāsa Radha Krishna Bhogavna Sam Kund Radha Kund Giri Jai Vrindavan Dham ki Jai Navadvip Dham ki Jai Ganga Mai ki Jai Jamuna Mai ki Jai Guru Dwarka Dham ki Jai Swami Bhaktivedanta ki Jai. All glories to the Excellency. All glories to the Excellency. Thank you very much.
Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Bhakti Siddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prashantaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Ghoratvishe Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Sri Rup Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We'll be reading from Sri Caitanya-caritāmṛta, original non-adulterated 1974 version. We are reading from Adi Lila, chapter 1, text number 58. Jive sakshat nahi tate guru chaitya rupe, shiksha guru hai Krishna mahanta swarupe. Jive, by the living entity, sakshat, direct experience, nahi, there is not, tate, therefore, guru, the spiritual master, chaitya rupe, in the form of the Supersoul, shiksha guru, the spiritual master who instructs, high appears, Krishna, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mahanta, the topmost devotee, Swarupe, in the form of. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Since one cannot visually experience the presence of the Supersoul, he appears before us as a liberated devotee. Such a spiritual master is no one other than Krishna himself. Purport by His Divine Grace. It is not possible for a conditioned soul to directly meet Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if one becomes a sincere devotee and seriously engages in devotional service, Lord Krishna sends an instructing spiritual master to show him favor and invoke his dormant propensity for serving the Supreme. The preceptor appears before the external senses of the fortunate conditioned soul, and at the same time, the devotee is guided from within by the Chaitya Guru. Krishna, who is seated as the spiritual master within the heart of the living entity. Tato dusangamutsrijya satsu shajjeta bhuttiman santa evasya chindanti manovyasangamuktibihi. Tata, therefore, dusangam, bad association, with srijya, giving up, satsu, with the devotees, sajjeta, one should associate, buddhiman, an intelligent person, santa, devotees, eva, certainly, asya, ones, chindanti, cut off, manah vyasangam, opposing attachments, uktibihi, by their instructions. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. One should therefore avoid bad company and associate only with devotees. With their realized instructions, such saints can cut the knot, connecting one with activities unfavorable to devotional service. Purport by His Divine Grace. This verse, which appears in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11:26-26, was spoken by Lord Krishna to Uddhava in the text known as the Uddhava Gita. The discussion relates to the story of Pururava and the heavenly courtesan Urvashi. When Urvashi left Pururava, he was deeply affected by the separation and had to learn to overcome his grief. It is indicated that to learn the transcendental science, it is imperative that one avoid the company of undesirable persons and always seek the company of saints and sages who are able to impart lessons of transcendental knowledge. The potent words of such realized souls penetrate the heart, thereby eradicating all misgivings accumulated by years of undesirable association. For a neophyte devotee, there are two kinds of persons whose association is undesirable. One, gross materialists who constantly engage in sense gratification, and two, unbelievers who do not serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but serve their senses and their mental whims in terms of their speculative habits. Intelligent persons seeking transcendental realization should very scrupulously avoid their company. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, who has opened my eyes from the darkness of ignorance with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. So this is a continuation of various instructions on the topic of Shiksha and Diksha and spiritual master and how to receive proper instruction. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami here is describing a very important point. Srila Prabhupada is mentioning it is not possible for a conditioned soul to directly meet Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if one becomes a sincere devotee and seriously engages in devotional service, Lord Krishna sends an instructing spiritual master to show him favor and invoke his dormant propensity for serving the Supreme. In our Sampradaya, we have Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada, who is considered the foremost authority in the science of Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. In his Bhakti Sandarbha, he has described a very similar point, that for conditioned souls, they cannot have direct access to Bhagavan Sri Krishna. That has to be done via the media of sadhus and saintly persons. And according to the power, there's a Sanskrit word called taratamya, which means gradual elevation. According to their power of devotion, power of purity, power of instruction, they can impart spiritual knowledge and give benediction for a conditioned soul to be able to become elevated and take up the process of bhakti. This is explained, the same basic point is explained here by Srila Prabhupada. Now, this question has been raging in our movement for the last 45 years of what is Srila Prabhupada's position and what did Srila Prabhupada want with regards to initiating people in the process in the beginning of Krishna consciousness. We have seen various philosophical points that have been articulated in the last 45 years, many of whom have been rejected, have been discarded, and are no longer tenable. Why? Because many of these points were rushed in for political purposes. In the path of bhakti, there's no room for political nonsense. We see in the Caitanya-caritāmṛta and the Madhya Lila, in the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Srila Rupa Goswami, Prabhupada describes in one purport that if one does not receive the Bhaktilata Bij from the spiritual master, instead he cultivates the karma bij, the jnana bij, or the social bij, the political bij, or the philanthropic bij. Bij means seed. And there's a whole set of various very important instructions by Srila Prabhupada of what constitutes the bona fide Bhaktilata Bij. Now, what we have many times is individuals who have all kinds of misconceptions, misunderstandings, and various kinds of, it's called Viruddha Siddhanta, or contradictory conclusions, or Apasiddhantas, wrong conclusions about what is the position of the Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, often referred to as Sampradaya-Acārya. The difficulty we have is unless somebody clearly understands the exalted position of the Acharya, it becomes very difficult to understand the teachings. The teachings of bhakti have to be understood from a Shuddha Bhakta, a completely realized pure devotee. Otherwise, one may think he's engaged in some bhakti, some sort of bhakti. It may not be bhakti yoga, it may be bhukti yoga. Bhakti means devotion, loving devotion. Bhukti means sense enjoyment. have often discussed that we are not a Rupi Anuga Sampradaya. We are Rupa Anuga Sampradaya based upon the teachings of the current Acharya, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Now, somebody may misunderstand that just making money, that may constitute spiritual advancement. Well, if one makes money, gives it to Krishna with a pure motive, that's very nice. Even if the motive is not pure, if it's given for the service of the pure devotee. But one has to spend the time to study the instructions of the Acharya. In 1977, when Srila Prabhupada went to London, one devotee, one senior man brought many book distributors to Srila Prabhupada. And he started to describe how this devotee is distributing that many books, and this other devotee has distributed that many books, and this devotee is doing so much service, and this and that. And Prabhupada stared at all these devotees, and he asked, so which one of you have read my books? And nobody answered. And Prabhupada said, I've not made these books, I've not translated these books simply for selling. These books are meant for study, for reading, for study. Another time, Srila Prabhupada told Prajimna, Panditji, that my disciples should study my books just like lawyers study their law books. In every country around the world, there are always some legal experts in the legal field who study the laws and study the precedent, the case law, to be able to practice in the courts. But they have to study. It's not simply an issue of memorization, but a person has to study diligently in order to properly understand what is the law and how it applies. Prabhupada said, my disciples should study every word in my book. I had an experience when I was in Canada of a devotee who says, oh, I want to debate you. I said, well, I don't really engage in too much debate, but what do you want to discuss? Oh, I want to discuss the guru issue. I said, oh, really? I said, why don't you look in the Prabhupada folio, this database, and look the word guru or spiritual master. You may find there's like at that point in time, in 1991, there was 5,139 entries, probably more by now. And just do the experiment of looking at every one of them, study every one of them. And after you finish that, then we'll have a discussion. He never came back. Now, why he didn't come back, I don't know. That's something he has to answer. In other words, it's not that I consider myself some kind of a scholar or big devotee. That is not the issue I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say is Srila Prabhupada's instruction to all of us to read his books and to diligently study his books is extremely important. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a society of sahajiyas, sentimentalists, of foolishness. And we've seen this. We've seen this in various points in our movement. So many different trumped up and crazy philosophies have sprouted up at different times. And when various attempts were made, especially in the beginning, to try to study this and discuss this in a cool-headed way, then all hell broke loose. Oh, they're all envious, they're all rascals, they're all this, they're all that. No. We wanted to find out and ascertain Srila Prabhupada's exact statements, not in some secret discussion in the back room, not in some secret elite that are going to discuss, that make some decision for everybody to follow. No. In public, in front of everybody, tell us exactly what Srila Prabhupada said. But we could not have that. As a matter of fact, one of these senior devotees said, well, there's nothing to discuss. We have already discussed everything. Oh, really? And you came to what conclusion? That you were appointed as some kind of successor? So when did this appointment take place? Or then when these discussions did not go their way, then all hell broke loose again. There's an interesting story in the Madhva Sampradaya. There is a Acharya who was a disciple of Madhvacharya named Akshobhya Tirtha. Madhvacharya had several direct disciples, and Akshobhya-tirtha was one of those direct disciples. He was a very big, powerful scholar. He had a debate with one Mayavadi sannyasi from Sringeri named Vidyaranya, and they were discussing the meaning of Tattvamasi, which is a verse from the Chandogya Upanishad describing the position of the individual soul. The various Advaitavadis or Mayavadis have got their interpretation, and the Vaishnavas of our Sampradaya have got a different interpretation. In other words, that the individual soul is the servant of Vishnu, servant of Krishna, eternally. We all know Prabhupada used to often quote that verse from the Katha Upanishad, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yuvidadati Kaman, that we're all eternals, but Krishna is the supreme eternals, and he's the one, Eko Bahunam Yuvidadati Kaman, that he maintains everybody. So there was a very long discussion, and one Acharya from the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, the Ramanujas, named Vedanta Deshika, he attended this debate. Another version is that the debate was written down, all the notes were taken, and they were submitted to this Vedanta Deshika, who was basically friend with all the different parties, and he gave his decision. But the point is that these discussions took place, even though these people have very divergent, different philosophical positions. There was no acrimony, no name calling, no threats of beating, threats of killing, threats of assassination, threats of foul language and everything. No, none of this nonsense. It was very civilized. And this Vedanta Deshika from the Sri Vaishnava gave his judgment. He said, Asina tattamasina parajiva prabedina vidyaranyam maharanyam akshobhyam munirachina. That this Vidyaranya was like a very big forest, very powerful debater. But Akshobhya-tirtha cut down, Akshobhyam munirachina, he cut down all of his arguments and established the position of the supremacy of the servitude of the soul to the Supreme Lord, Krishna or Vishnu. But the point is, although they had different positions, we don't find in their historical records threats of beating, threats of killing, all kinds of nonsense political garbage. We don't have that. But unfortunately in our movement, because of the rush to judgment, because of rushing to conclusion without knowing the facts, so many people cause great havoc in the spiritual life of thousands and millions of devotees. So devotees should be educated, should educate themselves. And the first level of education is not to accept the adulterated, changed, non-authorized books that have been peddled and presented by various leaders in this movement. That is complete political nonsense. There's no room in this movement for this kind of, he has seen the truth, which is Prabhupada's translation, today have seen the truth. Although from a Sanskrit grammatical perspective, it may be argued that the word upadikshanti is plural. That may be. But Prabhupada chose to translate that verse as he has seen the truth. And what did these self-appointed acharyas do? They chose to translate that they have seen the truth. For what purpose? What is the real motivation behind this change? What were they trying to do? What were they trying to accomplish? For those of us who know the political situation at that point in the movement, we know very well what they were trying to do. Self-promotion, self-aggrandizement. It's interesting how in the history of these two major sampradayas, the Sri Vaishnava, the Ramanujas, and the Madhvas, namely 800 or 900 years with the Madhva and 1100 years, 1,000 years with the Madhvas, they never had one single acharya, not one acharya, who ever changed one syllable of their previous acharya's writings. We had the good fortune at one point to live with one Vaishnava named Rangaraj Bhattar. He was the Pradhan Archaka, the main priest of the Sri Rangan temple in Tamil Nadu, South India. That is the place where Lord Ranganath is. And he took us around the temple and he showed us some of the writings of this Vedanta Deshika, who was the referee for that debate I referred earlier. So at one point I asked him, I says, in your Sampradaya, has there been anybody who has made changes to this? And he put his hand to his ear and says, oh no, nobody can touch. Nobody can touch. At least they have that much respect. In our movement, what did he do? While Prabhupada was with us, they started to change again his books. After the first original edition, and when they reprinted again, they started all with this nonsense editing and re-editing, grammatical embellishment. Prabhupada did not want this. That was not the desire of His Divine Grace. So this is a very difficult situation, because what we have now is 2 or 3 different sets of books. You can't run a sampradaya with 2 different set of books. That's what happened to the Christian religion. Those of you, incidentally, I just want to make a little notice here. We have present today one of our Prabhus, Garuda Prabhu, very distinguished scholar at Washington University. He's present with us. He was there in the beginning. I'm assuming he's still there. He does a lot of very positive work with his preaching with various scholars and academics, and we very much welcome his presence. But my point is, with these books, these various sampradayas have been going on for so many years, and they're still actively going on. And in our movement, we have all this nonsense going on with these book changes. Now, some people may very tactfully refer to it as just editing, but the point is, did Prabhupada want all of this editing? Why did Prabhupada say on a June 22nd, 1977 in Vrindavan in his garden, when they were reading the Bhagavatam and they found out there were some changes? Prabhupada said the next printing again should be the original way. Was the next printing again done the original way? No. Why not? As a matter of fact, in some temples, they don't even allow Prabhupada's original Bhagavad Gita, the 1972 Macmillan Bhagavad Gita. The Caitanya-caritāmṛta has been edited. If you look at chapter 1, Adilil number 1, in that first introductory page, Prabhupada made a reference to Bhaktivedanta Thakur that was initiated by Jagannath Das Babaji. They took it out. Oh, I see. So now they've become more than guru. They've become more learned than the Acharya. There was one devotee in Florida, dear Govinda, who wrote to the editors of the BBT requesting some explanation why they changed that. Their explanation was, well, it does not conform to our understanding of initiation in ISKCON. Oh, your understanding. The question is whether your understanding of initiation corresponds to Prabhupada's teachings and Prabhupada's orders and directives in 1977. That is the real question. The reason we have so many difficulties, in 1977, after that conversation in Prabhupada's garden, I happened to be in Srila Prabhupada's room, and I was sitting there while everybody was resuming their activities and walking out. And at one point, Prabhupada took his, in India, they have these fans, and they have this little crystal ball that you put on the desk. It's a placeholder. It's a paperweight. Prabhupada took his paperweight and slammed it on the desk. I was stunned. It made a loud noise. Then Prabhupada took his finger and pointed at me. He says, you there, you there. You tell the GBC if they change one word of what I've written, you'll spoil everything I've done. Everything I've done. I said, you get out, you write a letter. I was so stunned, I was like frozen. Prabhupada said, get out and write a letter. So after a while, I told the secretary and some others that Prabhupada was upset. So I went and drafted a letter, brought it back and sent it out. Never got a reply. In 45 years, the issue has still not been solved. Actually, I want to comment here at some point that little notice I made about Garuda Prabhu. He has recently, in the last few months, taken the first 1 or 2 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and referring to the 1972 Macmillan edition, and compiled the exact text that Srila Prabhupada had given without changing the text, the purports, what Prabhupada refers to as his Bhaktivedanta purports. And at the end, he made some annotations, which is a very scholarly way of presenting if there's any kind of references or scriptural references, giving the exact reference or certain things that may be there. So this was a very good service, and we hope that the people at the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust could correct their mistake and do things in the proper bona fide way. Yes, Vishwakarma Prabhu, your hand is up. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for your discussion from the purport. I wanted to ask Vincott if he could go to text 35 in Adi Lila and put that up on the screen. I wanted to go back to that. I found it very relevant to the discussion to help us understand further how Prabhupada wanted the movement to operate, especially after his departure. Text 35. Can you get that? It's Adi
Yeah.
Lila.
Just give me a second here.
Thank you.
Yeah, 35.
I first offer my respectful obeisances at the lotus feet of my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters, lotus feet, and all my instructing spiritual masters.
Your audio is cutting off.
Srila Jiva Goswami.
Okay, I think it might be better now.
How's that?
Yeah, we can try.
Jiva Goswami stated that uncontaminated devotional service is the objective of pure Vaishnavas, and execute such service in the association of other devotees. This was the tradition back in the 70s that we embraced, that Prabhupada had established a movement, and he had different people in different roles to help cultivate new people and give them instructions on how to take up devotional service. And if they did follow the process properly for a period of 6 months, then by the temple president could send a letter to Srila Prabhupada and recommend that these people become initiated. By associating, I'll continue reading, by associating with devotees of Lord Krishna, one develops a sense of Krishna consciousness and thus becomes inclined toward the loving service of the Lord. This is the process of approaching the Supreme Lord by gradual appreciation in devotional service. So that would happen within that incubation period for the first 6 months of a person's entrance into a temple. If one desires unalloyed devotional service, one must associate with devotees of Sri Krishna, for by such association, only can a conditioned soul achieve a taste for transcendental love, and thus revive its eternal relationship with Godhead in a specific manifestation and in terms of the specific transcendental mellow rasa that one has eternally inherent in him. Just a comment here. We were living on Gerrard Street in Toronto, okay, before we bought the Avenue Road Temple. Now, the Gerrard Street Temple was a house. We had 50 people living in it. 50. There were 18 men living on the 3rd floor, brahmacharis. We would have ecstatic kirtans. We had quite a group of musically qualified people that knew and studied the art of kirtan. And I can tell all of you honestly, and there is recordings of these kirtans, when we conducted, every night after going out on the street all day, we would come home, have our evening prasad, whatever it was, simple, and then we would have a class and a kirtan that would go on for maybe an hour or an hour and a half. And people tasted the nectar of the holy names in association with other devotees. This was a real family of devotees that worked together, that served together, and surrendered together at the lotus feet of the pure devotee, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. This wasn't some sentimental movement, believe me. So we're going to switch down. I want you to go down, Vinkat, to the bottom of the page where it says, one should always remember that a person who is reluctant to accept a spiritual master and be initiated is sure to be baffled in his endeavor to go back to Godhead. We see that with a lot of people that are not initiated, and especially those people that have been initiated by gurus who are not authorized, and then they fall away and they don't know which way to go. We have practical experience in our group right now, people that are baffled because they have no guru. They don't know who to turn to or what to do. One who is not properly initiated may present himself as a great devotee, but in fact, he is sure to encounter many stumbling blocks on the path of progress towards spiritual realization, with the result that he must continue his term of material existence without relief. Such a helpless person is compared to a ship without a rudder, for such a ship can never reach its destination. Our personal experience is that we're seeing many people after 53 years of serving our spiritual master. We're finding people today that are like ships without rudders. They're just wandering all over the material world, doing whatever they think is right. This is not the way Prabhupada ran his movement when he was alive. This is a farce. Okay, it is imperative, therefore, one accept a spiritual master if he had all desires to gain the favor of the Lord. The service of the spiritual master is essential. If there's no chance to serve the spiritual master, watch this key point here, everyone. If there is no chance to serve the spiritual master directly, a devotee should serve him by remembering his instructions. So Prabhupada lives in his Vani incarnation. He created a colossal collection of instructions in his books, in his lectures, in his letters, in his morning walks. People want to read all these different books. I tell them, go ahead. After you finish reading all of Prabhupada's books, then you can maybe switch over, or you're in a special field, you could do that. But for the general group of devotees, we should focus only on reading Prabhupada's unadulterated change books. That is the rule. Here we go. There is no difference between the spiritual master's instructions. No difference. Hear this carefully, everyone. Do not mentally speculate on what's being said here. Listen. There is no difference between the spiritual master's instructions and the spiritual master himself. He lives forever in sound. Our position is we're in a transcendental movement This idea that you need a guru with of flesh and blood. This is not our philosophy. We are spirit souls, eternal servants of Krishna. And we are receiving this information from the transcendental via media of a pure devotee, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, who is empowered by Krishna to leave these instructions for humanity at large for thousands of years. Here we go. In his absence, Prabhupada is speaking here, not Vishwakarma. In his absence, therefore, his words of direction should be the pride of the disciple. If one thinks that he's above consulting anyone else, including a spiritual master, he is at once an offender of the lotus feet of the Lord. Such an offender can never go back to Godhead. It is imperative that a serious person accept a bona fide spiritual master in terms of the Shastric injunctions. I'm going to deviate for one more second here. One of my godbrothers, he suggested that I watch a movie called, I think it's called Spotlight. It's about priests in Boston some years ago, and the Boston newspaper was trying to expose child molestation in the Catholic Church. Very, it's kind of relative to the message is relative to the circumstances that we found the ISKCON movement has been involved in. And so I thought, okay, I will take the time, I'll check this out. It was quite an interesting show. Now, they were researching 3 or 4 priests in the diocese in Boston. And then someone did a study at one of the, I don't recall exactly how they did it, but they did a study and they revealed that 10% of priests were involved in child molestation. So when the paper saw that, they went ahead and they did an analysis and they discovered that there were 1,200 priests in the diocese of Boston, that area. So that meant there were 120 pedophiles, according to the statistics given by this university, that were practicing illicit behavior with the children, like the altar boys, of which I was one of them. I never was affected in Hamilton, Canada, but I know about the Catholic environment. So I thought to myself, well, what's been the situation in the ISKCON movement? Well, out of 150 people they've made gurus, 75 of them have fallen down. 75, not 50. More than 50. And every day, more and more is being revealed about this. So it's very important for us to listen carefully to this last statement in Prabhupada's purport. It is imperative that a serious person accept a bona fide spiritual master in terms of the Shastric injunctions, that the guru lives in his sound. Sri Jiva Goswami advises that one not accept a spiritual master in terms of heredity or customary social and ecclesiastical conventions. One should simply try to find a genuine, qualified spiritual master for actual advancement in spiritual understanding. This is the point, that there is no such thing as elected guru. And not in our disciplic succession. You become self-manifested by your behavior and by by who you are. And Prabhupada demonstrated that. And he very much wanted us to all take the role of instructor spiritual masters. When people speak about that, to me, I always understood that very simply. Yes, we're helping our spiritual master. That is our position. And we're helping others to take shelter of his lotus feet. and that will be their success in spiritual life. So, Yaśodā, could you please comment again?
I think this is a very important point. Is the audio on?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's a very important point because this controversial still rages on in our movement. And I think one of the problems we have is in order to have a productive, progressive discussion, it's necessary to have the proper climate. You cannot have a climate of fanaticism and a climate of blind fanaticism, of craziness, when you enter into a discussion. A person has to be open-minded. I mean, because we see that Prabhupada complained in one letter that he was always afraid of a great crack of people misinterpreting the spiritual master's instruction. And he complained that in his Guru Maharaj institution, the Gaudiya Math, that this would happen, people interpreting the spiritual master's instruction for sense gratification. And I think this is a very dangerous, slippery slope. We have to look at the truth and establish the truth. And if somebody has made a mistake or has a misunderstanding, then you should correct it. I mean, I know among Sanskrit scholars of these different sampradayas I mentioned, although there are differences, they don't go attacking one another, name calling and cursing and all that. They don't do that. But in our movement, maybe it's due to the conditioning of lecture culture, they have a very hard time dealing with the proper Vaishnava civility and the proper Vaishnava climate. And as soon as you bring up various incidents that have taken the past and raise relevant questions, all hell breaks loose. Well, why? Why can't they discuss it? Garuda Prabhu, please go ahead. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Here we go. My pranams to all of you. This is my first time here. It's glad to see all of you. I don't know a lot of you here, but I am pleased to have the darshan of such esteemed brothers and sisters here. Thank you, Yaśodā-nanda ji. If Prabhupada says he lives on in his words, in his Vani, then it stands to reason that if his words are being altered, one has to question whether or not we are receiving Prabhupada's darshan. So 6 years ago, very seasoned, dedicated, sweet, very intelligent devotees approached me and asked me to please look into this. And I was hesitant, but I realized that if Prabhupada's Vani could be altered, then one could expect anything after that in the movement. Anything. Problems with Guru identity, problems with, connecting with Prabhupada and the Guru Parampara, problems with abuse of not just children, but of devotees in general. I mean, anything can happen. Everything else is epiphenomenal to the basic principle of adulterating, the word that Vishwakarmaji used, the tampering, a word that BBT uses in the front of the Brahma Samhita. Anything can happen after Prabhupada's Vani is tampered with. So I did decide to go ahead and do this, even though I'm very much in my little blissful bubble of writing books and teaching Krishna Bhakti for 35 years in the university classroom at 2 different universities now. And it's all culminated, and I put in the chat the website that shows you the end result about which Yaśodā-nanda ji was referring earlier. So you can go to that website, www.50thmac72.com. Now, you might be pleased to know that I requested a meeting with the BBT board, a formal, legal, but devotional, both, request letter to the chairman. And I have such a meeting coming up next Tuesday to propose that Prabhupada's words are to be kept completely intact. Do not change Prabhupada's words, but you can offer annotations, that is to say, explanations, citations, and so on, at the end of the book, in endnotes, with little superscript numbers, hardly noticeable in the text, where a reader could entertain some consideration if there was some problem or something that might have been mistranscribed, but you don't change Prabhupada. You offer some alternate possibility gently in an endnote. Prabhupada himself, and I show this on the website, Prabhupada himself used annotations in the Delhi Bhagavatams. This is not new. And all the scholars, now there are 10 endorsements from scholars that I've gotten that have appreciated tremendously my approach to preserving the master's works. The fraudulent application of scholars' endorsements for the 72 edition of the Gita have been applied to the 83 edition. This is immoral. It's just immoral. So, without going into details, and I don't want to belabor this, it's relevant to what Yaśodā-nandana ji has been reading in the Caitanya-caritāmṛta. The instructions, the words of the spiritual master is the life of the devotee. But if someone comes in and tampers with that, this is the most egregious and root cause of all other problems. I would proffer, maybe some of you may not agree with this, but I'm open to any dialogue on this sort of thing, but books are the basis. Not the tampered books, but books are the basis. We have a god sister who confided in me, and she said to me, very advanced, very knowledgeable, scholarly. She said, Garuda, honestly, I don't know whether I can trust what I'm reading anymore. I'm just going to listen to Prabhupada's lectures, assuming that they're not doing any kind of sonic interruptions and manipulations there. This is sad. This is really sad when a senior god sister says to me, she's not going to be able to trust Prabhupada's books because someone's been tampering. This is so sad. I just can't imagine how Prabhupada would even entertain this. And lastly, I'll say that Prabhupada's instructions align and this should not be a surprise to any of you here, but they align perfectly and smoothly with the highest professional, scholarly, and devotional principles. After my study of every single little change that Jayadvaita made in Prabhupada's Gita, I have come up with the percentage that maybe 15%, not 50, 15% of his editing could be considered good editing. On the other hand, the editing he did, he put in the wrong place. He changed Prabhupada's book that he signed off on, that he said was complete. I have a copy of the contract with Macmillan, with the proviso, revisions, and then Prabhupada typed in to the contract, not without the consent of the author, and he initialized it by hand. There is great clarity in all of this. After 5 years of in-depth scholarly, devotional, and this is not just Garuda in isolation. This is Garuda speaking with numerous scholars, numerous seasoned, really dedicated, not extremist devotees. I mean, really dedicated devotees. So I'm just letting you all know that I'm going to be speaking for an hour with the BBT, proposing this extremely chaste and authentic approach to preserve the spiritual master's words on Tuesday. And frankly, if you could remember me on that day and pray for me, I would really appreciate it. I could really use it, especially from Vishwakarma and Yaśodā-nanda, who are very well aware of this situation. So anyway, thank you for your attention to this update.
I wanted to, if you could recall, I had a conversation with Prabhupada in Toronto about you attending university for academic studies. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do recall that. Yes.
And I was complimenting the fact that you were doing that because it wasn't a normal thing for.
No, I'm quite abnormal in every way, Vishwakarma.
Yeah, but I felt it was complimentary to our efforts because it's good for people in whatever field of expertise they're in to dovetail themselves in that particular field in the service of Krishna.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the idea. I was also, as you know, a very good friend of Joseph O'Connell.
Yes, of course. Joe was wonderful.
Yeah, and he was the one that had invited Bon Maharaj to come to Toronto, and I had a chance we had no idea who Bon Maharaj was. We had heard about him.
Yeah.
But when we invited him to speak at the temple, innocently, because we were naive in a sense, we were Canadians, let's say. You know, everybody, we say sorry to everyone. We didn't mean it. And we invited him to come to the temple and speak at the Sunday feast. And when he was speaking in front of Radha Gopinath, he started to exhibit symptoms of prema bhakti and started to cry, which all of us knew at least one thing. This was sahajya, and we got up and walked out of the temple room. And when we filed the report with Prabhupada about what had happened, he got in touch with me and he asked me these relevant questions. He wanted to know, does he have tilak on? Did he have neck beads? The answer was no tilak, no neck beads, no bead bag, no danda. Prabhupada asked all these specific questions to get some insight on what kind of conduct
presentation
that he was manifesting in front of his disciples, Prabhupada's disciples. And then Prabhupada sent me a definitive letter. I think Yaśodā might have it, or Vincott. And he said categorically that he didn't want any of his disciples to associate with the Gaudiya Math. Now, a lot of this guru business that's come up has come up as a result of the association that some of our godbrothers did after Prabhupada's demise with going to the Gaudiya Math for advice, including Rupanuga and Kirtananda. A complete mistake. And as a result, I've written an article. It's called ISKCON Gaudiya Math Part 2. And it's almost like a duplication of what happened in the past to Prabhupada is now happened to us in the current day and age. Yaśodā, could you comment, please?
History can repeat itself.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Yaśodā.
this is a known fact to many senior disciples, this association with various advisors from the Gaudiya Math. Now, to put this in perspective, Srila Prabhupada always maintained a very friendly and courteous relationship with his god brothers. I was personally in Prabhupada's presence when Prabhupada walked from the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir in 1973 and visited Bhaktivedanta at the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he told devotees to bring a copy of his Bhagavad Gita, of his 1972 Bhagavad Gita. And
Right.
I remember Madhvesa Swami, Guru Kripa Swami, and Tamal Krishna, numerous senior sannyasis were there. And we all sat, Prabhupada sat, offered his obeisances, and Prabhupada was very respectful to him. Although, for those of us who've studied Prabhupada's statements about his God brothers in the Gaudiya Math, he did not approve of the way that the mission was divided and compromised after the departure of Bhaktisiddhanta. But in his dealing with him, this Bhaktivedanta, Prabhupada was very respectful. Now, having said that, it is not a blanket approval of all of their ideas. And let me give an example of this. In 1972, we went to the Bagh Bazar Gaudiya Math. This is the marble palace that was built during the manifested presence of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. For those of you who know, Prabhupada referred to that property and said, if I could sell what Bhaktisiddhanta said, if I could sell all the marbles and print books, I would do that. He was referring to that property. Now, we went there looking for Brahma Samhitas with Bhaktisiddhanta's commentary. So one of these Vaishnavas there took us to a room on the upper floors, opened the doors with some old dusty boxes, and we asked him to buy, we wanted to get 10 copies. So we looked at it, we gave him a donation, and basically we brought it back and showed it to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada looked at it, and he looked at the date of publication. And he said, this book was published during the manifested presence of my Guru Maharaj. It is okay, but do not get anything after his departure in 1937, because they started to edit his books. So this problem of re-editing books is not just within our mission, that was also there within the Gaudiya Math mission. Now, this is a very insidious problem, which has caused a lot of havoc, because I mean, in my personal interaction with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada told me if they change one word from my books, it will spoil everything. And I know how people try to circumvent that by saying, well, it was done by Hayagriva, it was done by this editor, that editor. No, no, no. Just leave it. Do not do this. I mean, the system that was recommended by Gurudev Prabhu is the proper scholarly academic system of being proper annotations. Of course, I don't know what the BBT or so-called BBTI would do at this point, because if they're the ones that are going to do annotations without any check and balances, what is it going to be? So it is a problem. At this point, Jiva Goswami Prabhu or Anda Bahya, maybe you can make your comments. Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
You're first. You're first. Okay, I just had a really quick comment, in that you know, the how potent the spiritual master's Vani is. I was talking with somebody and they were saying, but you know, I need a person, a body who can guide me and chastise me. And I said, okay. Well, have you ever opened up the book and started reading and felt chastised? Because I do every time, on every page I feel chastised, you know. So everything is there in his books, and please let's reserve them as they were. Thank you, Garuda Prabhu.
Good point. Very good point. Any other comments or questions?
I had a question about the difference between ecclesiastical and elected. It seems like Vishwakarma Prabhu was saying that they were the same. And I'd like to know technically what's the difference between ecclesiastical and elected.
Can't hear you.
Garuda, could you answer that by chance? The ecclesiastical system of election?
Yeah, well, in different traditions, it works different ways. Prabhupada did arrange for a governing body commission. He did not create the guru system that is presently in ISKCON. In fact, he really didn't prescribe a particular system at all. And as an historian, I would observe that the guru-shishya relationship is something that bubbles up naturally, one way or another. Whether one feels that, look, I'm simply linking you to Prabhupada, honestly, I have a group of students, disciples, very small, and it's not connected with any authorized person within ISKCON. I'm happy not to be on a list with Mr. Wexler and Lokanath Swami, or Lokanath, I should say. The idea is that each person needs to figure out, from whom will I receive the greatest inspiration? In whom can I trust to guide me to Prabhupada's gifts? Who will illuminate Prabhupada's gifts for me? So I like what Mataji said earlier, that you can just open Prabhupada's books and you can get plenty of instruction there. But it also helps. I've listened recently with affection some of Vishwakarmaji's talks, and someone gets on and says, Bobby. So I realize that there's an informal sort of secular setting that he's in, and he's asking a question of Vishwakarmaji, my senior godbrother, who's sitting there so patiently and sweetly responding, and in some sense distilling the message that Prabhupada brought, so that person can then go to Prabhupada's books and read with even greater delight. And that's the whole principle. That's the shuka principle, the parrot principle of biting into the mango. And I was thinking how sweet it is for me to hear Vishwakarma's simple but pristine, what came across to me in Vishwakarma's words? It's not that he was, expounding upon, the sort of technical theological tenets of Krishna Bhakti and Krishna Bhakti and Radha Krishna Prema and all that. It was his own affection for Prabhupada's teachings and his love for Prabhupada that came through. And this is teacher. So I'm sorry if I'm embarrassing you, Vishwakar. I don't mean to. I'm just saying that this is what the future generations need. As long as we still have breath in our lungs, and we're all getting older, many of us here, the best thing we can convey to others is our love for Prabhupada's teachings and help people understand some of the more difficult things in Prabhupada's books. Let them know how we navigate through Prabhupada's, frankly, voluminous and complex teachings. We need to be an example of receiving the shiksha from Prabhupada. So there's no choosing that.
Thank you very much.
There's no choosing that, right? Yaśodā-nandana. It's something that we either manifest or we don't,
That's correct. That's correct. I just want to read something from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is very relevant to the point raised by Vishwakarma Prabhu and Garuda Prabhu. This is from canto number 3, text 3148. And it really deals with the issue, the relationship between the book of Srila Prabhupada, the original message, and the guidance, the physical, I love this term, this living physical guidance that people keep referring to. Srila Prabhupada states in the purport, it is sometimes misunderstood that if one has to associate with persons engaged in devotional service, he will not be able to solve the economic problem. To answer this argument, it is described here that one is to associate with liberated persons, not directly, physically, but by understanding through philosophy and logic, the problems of life. It is stated here, Samyak Darshanaya Buddhya, one has to see perfectly, and by intelligence and yogic practice, one has to renounce this world. That renunciation can be achieved by the process recommended in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So here we see Prabhupada making a very important point about his teachings, because Prabhupada knew from practical experience the overemphasis on this physical relationship that took place in 1937 in his spiritual master's institution, and the unfortunate result it created, the artificial attempt to institutionalize an acharya, along with all kinds of legal quabbles, legal fights in the courts that lasted for 40 years. And then Prabhupada, in one of his conversations, complained that everybody was thinking that after the disappearance of Guru Maharaj, I shall become acharya, I shall become acharya. So this is like a very fine point of how Srila Prabhupada himself emphasizes books, his instructions, his directive as the primary means of association with him, because physicality has only so much duration. We've often discussed in these discussions about the point about Vani and Vapu. The duty of every disciple and follower of Srila Prabhupada is to emphasize the pure, unadulterated Vani of Srila Prabhupada, not their own Vapu as the connection. That's why all these great acharyas and all the sampradayas have written all these elaborate commentaries, all these purports, all these instructions, and Prabhupada has condensed all of these instructions very nicely in very simple, clear English language to give this to the world. I mean, I had the opportunity and the very rare privilege of being at night in 1970 watching Prabhupada translate with this big, massive books with 18 or 20 commentaries in Sanskrit of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he's concentrating in giving the essence, the absolute essence of what he's giving there. I mean, he's not translating every word of every acharya's commentary, but he's giving the essence, what he heard from Bhaktisiddhanta, from Bhaktivedanta Thakur, from Vishwanath Chakravarti, from Rupa Goswami, and he is condensing this. And he's presenting it in such a way that even people who don't have technical knowledge of Sanskrit, who are not scholars, simple people, that they can understand this and greatly benefit their lives and others. So this is a great gift, and the preservation of that gift is a very, very important point. That is the foremost task of Srila Prabhupada's senior disciples, students, and everybody should support this. Yes, Prabhu, you had another comment, Garuda Prabhu?
Oh, I was just doing thumbs up. I wasn't not raising my hand. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted
you
to.
You have different options in Zoom, so that was a thumbs up, not raise hand.
That's fine. I wanted to have our Bhakta from South India, Bhaktivedanta. I see his hands up. Prabhu, could you please present your comments or questions? Thank you.
Sure. Well, I just had I guess with respect, I had a point of disagreement with Garuda Prabhu when he mentioned that Srila Prabhupada didn't really leave any system of initiation or system of continuing the disciplic succession, or in spite of many attempts by his disciples to suppress this information. We know now, if we do proper research, we know that he left the Ritvik system of initiations. If we connect the dots, there's like the July 9th letter, there's his will, where points 3 and 4 of his will, if you take them together, it's that it by itself is conclusive evidence that he wanted some kind of system in place, which he has laid out to continue, because he wanted his properties to be managed by his initiated disciples, and his property should never be sold, mortgaged, etc. So that if you take those two together, it implies that even into the future, we want him to be the Diksha Guru. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, but maybe we can discuss it another time in a different meeting.
Yes, we could. We're moving close to the end. We have a devotee in Mayapur, Jan Petro Bortalin. Prabhu, please. He's in Mayapur, India. Please
Krishna.
present your questions. Haribol.
Gauramani Prabhu.
My respectful obeisances to everyone. Yes, I think another point that should be made clear is just a moment. I tell you this point that they use to sustain. Like here, there's a letter of Srila Prabhupada that say, concerning the editing of Jayadvaita Prabhu, whatever he does is approved by me. So I would like to understand well the meaning of these words of Prabhupada. I mean, because even in another occasion, regarding another guru that is deviating, but they present some Prabhupada's words that he's like he says.
I understand your point.
This devotee has a great intelligence, no? So, and they use these words of Prabhupada to keep high their point of view that they can do everything they are doing.
Yes,
so please, can you make clear this point, please?
Garuda, please, Garuda.
I can step in? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That famous conversation in which Prabhupada says, yes, Jayadvaita, I trust him. And that was in the context of editing the 8th and 9th cantos of the Bhagavatam. This was not a carte blanche. It was provisional appreciation of what Prabhupada, of what Jayadvaita was doing under Prabhupada's supervision. This is not to say that the same kind of editing could go on indefinitely without the supervision of the author, who's the only one who has the authority. In fact, even in the outer world, it's unthinkable to change the work of a deceased author when it is clear that he or she signed off and published it. It is unthinkable. If Prabhupada's 72 Macmillan edition were still being published by Macmillan, Jayadvaita could never have gotten away with all those alterations. I actually asked Jayadvaita, I taught Jayadvaita how to write his first book. He came to me one day and said, Garuda, I've done lots of editing. I've written lots of articles for BTG. I was the editor for BTG for many years, blah, blah, blah. He said, I've never written a book. So will you guide me? I said, sure. So he wrote his book with this odd title, Vanity Karma, but he, I suggested that he might want to come up with a different title. But anyway, and, there were different times when he said, do you agree with what I'm writing here? I said, Swami, this is your book. This is not my book. So it's your voice, not my voice. And anyway, so a few years ago, while I've been examining very carefully his work, I called him up. I said, so Jayadvaita, I have earlier drafts of your Vanity Karma book on my computer to this day. If you predecease me, and 5 years later, after you pass from this world, and I discover that, oh my God, some of your earlier drafts are better than your current published book. Would you have a problem if I came out with a second edition? Now, any of you who knows Jayadvaita, when he's defeated, he just doesn't say anything. So he didn't say anything. Of course he wouldn't want. I wouldn't want. No author ever would want someone to come along, even if if Vishwakarma invites me and my wife to stay in his place for 2 weeks while he goes away, and when he comes back, he finds that my wife and I completely redecorated his house. Even if it looks better. Garuda, what in the world have you done? Vishwakarmaji, look, it's so much better now, isn't it? I've spent $100,000 on your decor. No, Garuda, you had no right to do this. And that's exactly the way it is with an author's publication. Unless you get the permission from the author, you cannot change his or her books, period. What to speak of the Acharya's precious Vani, as we've been reading about earlier in the CC.
I just wanted to make one point here. In 1977, in the Rascal Editors Conversation on June 22nd, 1970s, in Prabhupada's Bar Garden, as part of these back and forth discussion, at one point, Prabhupada said, the next printing again should be the original way. Prabhupada made another comment, they cannot change anything. So whatever Prabhupada may have said in 1976 was superseded by those very important instructions in 1977. One cannot neglect a later statement claiming, well, Prabhupada said this before, therefore I'm going to do what I want. That is not the proper way of understanding. Now, Prabhupada was trying to be respectful of everybody's work, but when Prabhupada found out that during his manifested presence, his first edition original books, for lack of a better term, were being re-edited, he did not want that. He wanted that to be stopped.
That's right.
And this is a very important point. Before we all depart our bodies, this has to be conclusively established. Another point that's going to may have to be established is the legal validity of this BBTI. But that is not a trust. That is the California Religious Corporation, nonprofit religious corporation. It is no longer acting as the original trust. So however way they think they got the copyright transferred, that is a legal issue that eventually may have to be dealt with. But the point is that the changes to the books cannot go on.
Yes.
That is not Prabhupada's desire. Just respectfully submitted for everybody. I think we've reached the allotted time, and I want to thank everybody, especially Garuda Prabhu and everybody who made comments. And Vishwakarma, you can probably just conclude everything and have the kirtan.
Yeah, we do apologize that we haven't been able to receive everyone's questions. We are out of time, but there will be another time. And I wanted to remind everyone that we do have a class. We're reading through all of the books. So the next class will be Saturday morning. We're having a Bhagavad Gita class, and Sunday, the Srimad Bhagavatam class. And then we started word for word. We've been reading Caitanya-caritāmṛta. It was a very lively discussion tonight and very exciting. And this is the idea of sadhu sangha, to come together with devotees, discuss the philosophy. Like I said, we apologize if we didn't get everyone's questions and comments at this class, but there will be another time. Vinkat, could you please bring on the kirtan, and we'll end up the session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
Thank you very much to everyone. I think all glories to Srila Prabhupada.